Hey, you. Welcome back to I'll Have What She's Having, the essential podcast for all things sexual healing, sexual freedom, and living a freaking turned on life. I mean, who doesn't want to wake up in the morning and go, fuck yes, this is my life. I feel so alive, and today's gonna be amazing. That is what we do here. And then we do the practical work of removing what's in our way. So today I'm sharing a gorgeous conversation with Mangala Holland, a sex coach from the UK. She has been doing this work for over a decade. And today we talk about, firstly, why pleasure is essential, not just a nice to have, but also how to spot red flags and avoid falling into unsafe Tantra communities, why embodiment and not quick fixes is the key to sustainable transformation, the truth about cervical orgasms, midlife pleasure, and why it's never too late to feel fully alive. How to find the right teachers, spaces, and practices that actually support your healing, and why pleasure is not the goal, but a path back home. To give you a little more background on today's guest, she is a leading international expert in female pleasure. Mangala Holland is a woman's sexual confidence and orgasm coach and is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Orgasms Made Easy, the no-nonsense guide to self-pleasure, sexual confidence, and female orgasms. She's on a mission to help women and pussy owners become empowered through loving themselves fiercely, celebrating their sexuality, and overcoming the fear, guilt, and shame that keeps them playing small. She has 12 years in the industry, and her superpower is helping women and vulva owners become deeply connected to their bodies, pleasure, and orgasmic confidence, which we all know, if we're listening, is the natural birthright of absolutely everyone. She has a special talent for helping women in the perimenopause and beyond access way more pleasure than they ever thought possible. She believes that midlife is an opportunity for powerful and positive transformation, and yes, we do get into that today. She is currently training the next generation of embodied female pleasure facilitators and places a strong emphasis on self-love, embodiment, and empowerment in her work, teaching in a trauma-informed, no bullshit, fluff-free, grounded, dogma-free style. I am so excited to dive into today's conversation and to talk more with this beautiful guest. But of course, first, we do have a few quick announcements. First, if you're listening to this just after the episode came out and you're in Vancouver, you're in luck. We are hosting an in-person event on Saturday, October 18th. It's called Emerge. It's an archetypal awakening, which basically means you get to dress up as a different part of who you are. The magician, the trickster, the lover, the performer, and you get to play. And you get to meet other like-minded humans in a substance-free space that is focused on connection. Plus, I'll be there. I'll be hosting some pleasure breathwork and some conscious touch and authentic relating workshops. So come say hi. This event will also include ecstatic dance, yoga, a cacao grounding ceremony, and a few other offers from local vendors. A cuddle space, a sound bath at the end. I mean, what more could you want? I'm so excited. Use code FRIENDSFIRST for a special discount. Ticket link is in the show notes. Come join us. I can't wait to see what part of you emerges. And second, I would love to take a moment to share some incredible feedback I received from one of my clients. I'm so excited to be working with so many amazing clients lately, people ready to step into their best selves, their most turned on, turned up, fuck yes, life force energy, and I'm in awe of the work that they are ready to do in order to claim the life of their dreams. One has recently shared the following words that left me so moved that I wanted to share them here, because this is the kind of transformation that is possible through my one-on-one sex coaching program. The quote goes, "Kris led me through a somatic experience that allowed me to go deeper than I ever thought possible. I felt safe as she guided me to the source of what was surfacing for me. She unlocked a part of me that I had been trying to unlock for years. My heart is more open than it has ever been, and I can't even find the words to fully express my gratitude. If you're hearing this and you're on the fence, lean into the discomfort of the unknown, for this is where the answers can be found." End quote. Oh, I get shivers when I hear it. So this is my call to you. If you're hearing this and you're curious and you want to make this fall the transformational turning point of this chapter of your life. If you want more from your life and you just can't seem to reach it, let's talk. I've got a couple more spots available, so schedule your free clarity call today because you can't afford to wait. The links are all in the show notes to schedule that call. I cannot wait to talk to you because your pleasure is your power and we can harness that shit and we can live the most incredible lives. Our time is short. Once again, the link is in the show notes. Send me a message, send me an email, or book your free clarity call and let's talk. And on that note, let's switch over / not switch over. We've been talking about pleasure already. Let's talk about pleasure for the entire next hour with our special guest, Mangala Holland. Enjoy. What if pleasure was the key to unlocking everything you've ever wanted? Welcome to I'll Have What She's Having, the podcast where your pleasure is your power and you're allowed to want it all. I'm your host, Kris Hall, a sexual empowerment coach, and I'm here to help you unleash your inner fire. Every other week, you'll get expert advice, practical tools, and juicy inspiration to help you feel more confident, turned on, and fully in your power. Because you deserve the kind of love life that makes people say, I'll have what she's having. Hello, welcome. So good to have you here today.
Hi, thank you, Kris. I am delighted to be here. Really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Oh my gosh. So let's get started with tell me about yourself. Tell me how you came to become a woman's sexual confidence and orgasm coach.
Yeah. So I'm Mangala Holland, and yeah, I've been doing this. I've been teaching this body of work for about 12 years now. Um, I haven't always been multi-orgasmic, and I think like many of us who get drawn towards this work, it's because of our own journey and the struggles we've been through ourselves. So back in my old life, I was working in corporate in the UK. I was working for a firm of stockbrokers, and I was traveling all over the country rolling out IT training programs and essentially, yeah, working for stiff white men in suits, helping them earn more money for other stiff white men in suits, and feeling massively unfulfilled. And in my spare time, I was a massive party animal. I was a huge raver, and I was also a DJ, and I was DJing in bars and nightclubs, and basically I'd go out on a Friday night and I'd roll in at some ungodly hour on a Sunday and then go back into work on a Monday morning feeling pretty feeling pretty rotten. And I did that for many, many, many years, and eventually I burnt out and I realized that was unsustainable, and I started to do I went through a bit of big sobriety journey. And as part of that journey, once I sobered up and I stopped spending all my money going out getting hammered every weekend, I realized that I was actually massively unfulfilled and deeply unhappy. And it set me off on this massive healing journey. And as I went through that healing journey, I started to discover that at the root of it was this deep connection with myself and with my body. I hated my body. I'd been seeking validation in all the wrong places. Um, and I was hugely insecure, and I'd been masking it all with partying and alcohol and everything else. And so I just realized this is completely unsustainable. And I took a year off to go and travel and to kind of do the classic find myself thing, yoga and meditation and everything else. And as part of that healing journey and that travel, that's when I started to really realize that at the core of this disconnect was my relationship to not just my body, but my sexuality. And that's when I discovered the world of neo Tantra and started exploring things. And and it was just like, it was a revelation when I remember having my first cervical orgasm and feeling like, oh my God, I didn't know my body was capable of this. This is absolutely incredible, particularly knowing where I'd come from. Everybody needs to know about this. And I made it my mission to like shout this from the rooftops. And I realized that this is what I want to be doing in my life, was helping empower people to discover it for themselves. And as part of that journey, I then realized eventually that I was the neo tantra environment that I was in was actually incredibly toxic and unhelpful and very unhealthy, and that I'd actually been in a high demand group, so a cult, and I was there for almost 6 years. And so as I came out of that and blew the whistle and tried to rebuild my life, you know, I realized that I had to strip away everything I thought I'd learned and knew about sexuality and pleasure and orgasms, and I made it my mission to, like, really help people, particularly women and vulva owners, help them discover this for themselves, help them find their power and their pleasure for themselves without having to go through the trauma that I went through along the way. Because so many women in that environment were being damaged, um, and were abused, and it was awful. There was a lot of really dogmatic, harmful stuff being taught in the name of sexual empowerment. And so, yeah, that's the short answer as to how I ended up doing what I do now. And as I say, I've been teaching this for 12 years, and I work with thousands of women and vulva owners all over the world, helping them become more empowered in their pleasure and helping them really connect to the essence of who they are. And yeah, it's an amazing, amazing journey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's an incredible story. I was not expecting it to take a turn into tantra cults, but I would love to just touch on that then because oh my goodness, I think that's a really big fear with a lot of people who are getting into it nowadays as well, is that there's so many teachers, there's so much information, and there's also a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of abusing of the power of the altered state of pleasure that we get into, right? Like it's basically a drug. And so how do we figure out what's safe, what's unsafe, and how do people not fall into the same rabbit hole that you did?
Yeah, oh, such a good question. Because I remember, like, when I first started exploring this stuff, and I'd have these, like, big, energetic, expansive experiences, and it's like, "Wow, my body can help me get high like this. I don't need drugs. I don't need to be up all night or all weekend. My body can create this natural psychedelic experience in and of itself." Like, oh my god, that was so incredibly liberating. And at the same time, as you say, that is an altered state that can be so easily taken advantage of. And I have unfortunately had to support so many people in kind of the aftermath and the wreckage of going into, whether it's a bodywork session and then this amazing energy gets unlocked and then the practitioner takes advantage of that, and there are boundary transgressions and sexual assaults that happen, or going into intensive week-long workshops where your sense of normality gets completely eroded and you get swept along in the group energy, and what you think is an amazing breakthrough in the moment turns out afterwards just to be a sympathetic nervous system response, and actually you end up doing things that you then deeply regret afterwards or get swept along in the energy, and then afterwards you go back to normal life and you go back to work and you're no further along than you were. And actually, for a lot of people, they do get deeply traumatized and re-traumatized as well. So, as you say, your question is really great because there is so much misinformation out there, particularly with the rise of things like TikTok. We're seeing that, anyone can set themselves up as an expert and have all the nice fancy pictures and a flashy website. It doesn't mean there's any substance behind it. So even, just working with somebody who's not being well trained or can be damaging in and of itself, let alone the predators that are out there. So it is a minefield, and just because your friends have had a really great experience in a container doesn't mean you're going to have a great experience as well. I actually spoke to someone just this week who was saying, I was the only person who didn't seem to be having a good time in this really wild workshop, and I thought it was something wrong with me. So I would always look for spaces that are not packed to the rafters. So I think there is a challenge when it comes to doing really high intensity retreats where you've got 40 or 60 people in a room. No matter how many assistants they've got in that space, if you want to do the deep work, like I do think small can often be better. Not always, but there is particularly if you want to do the deep work. And I think as well, looking for things where you are supported over a longer period of time, because it takes time for you to repattern your body and your brain and your nervous system for pleasure and to undo and detangle the conditioning and the blocks that have kept us feeling small and trapped and not in our full selves. That takes time. So quick fixes don't work. So be wary of anybody who promises quick fixes. Um, I would really recommend that if something seems like it's good, like say it's a teacher or a school, just because they have branches all over the world doesn't mean they're safe. So I would recommend doing a Google search and adding on to the name of that organization abuse or cult or controversy and things like that, and just seeing what comes up. Because thankfully there are a lot of people who do great work in exposing some of these organizations and teachers. So essentially what I'm saying is do your due diligence. Thankfully there's a lot more of that out there now than there was back in the day when I first dipped my toe in the water. Don't be afraid to shop around. Um, Ask for recommendations and get on a call with whoever it is you're thinking about working with, and don't be afraid to ask difficult questions. Ask about their experience. Ask them if they can hold somebody in your situation, if you've got some previous trauma or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And more than anything, trust your gut. So if something feels off, honor that and don't override it and try not to gaslight yourself into thinking, well, everyone else seems to be okay. Trust that gut feeling, because deep down, it's normally always there and it's very easy to tune that out.
Yeah. Yeah, those are really, really good points. I love the longer time too, the longer time spent with the teacher and the container. Because yeah, I think my number one would be like integration time. And like, do they offer integration time or do they kind of give you this like peak experience and then shove you back out into the world and say, okay, good luck, have fun. And you're kind of left going, wait, what? Because without integrating it, without actually sitting with it, without even like having a chance to speak to the practitioner afterwards, like you're going to be left kind of a sitting duck, and yeah, that's where that re-traumatization is more likely to occur.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I would say is also steer clear of anyone where teachers are having sex with students. That is a complete no-no. And you know, it shouldn't need to be said, but it does need to be said because there are a lot of places where they will tell you that that is the best way to learn, or that it's okay if you're the one as a student who makes an approach to the teacher. Like, it's a complete abuse of power. It really is.
Absolutely. Anytime there's a power dynamic, right? It's like there's a power dynamic between a student and a teacher, between a coach and a coachee, between a
Yeah.
therapist and like their client. Like there's no way around that. It exists. You cannot pretend that it's not there. And yeah, I think like I personally or like I was taught to have like a 2-year window, and even that is
Yeah.
probably like a maybe even never, but
Yeah.
like a 2-year window at least between when you work together and when you say, "Okay, maybe we wanna change this relationship." Oh, yeah. I that one hit me hard because I almost feel like it goes without saying, but you're right, it doesn't go without saying, and that is where so much of the trauma of the stories that we hear about comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
If sex feels painful, disconnected, or has a serious lack of orgasms and pleasure, it's time to pause. This isn't just about sex, it's about aliveness. Because when your body stops feeling safe to feel, you lose more than orgasms. You lose joy, turn on, creativity, and that sense of sparkly aliveness, that thing that gets you up out of bed in the morning that makes you excited for the day. But that can change starting now. That's why I created a totally free 15-minute pleasure breathwork called the Pleasure Portal. It's a guided, gentle, body-based experience to reconnect you to your turn on and begin the process of rewiring your nervous system for pleasure. Forget forcing yourself to feel sexy or trying to fix your libido. This isn't a checklist or a how-to. It's about dropping into your body and letting it speak to you. This is about remembering that you were made to feel deeply, wildly, and sensually alive. This isn't a cute sex tip. It's just 15 minutes. You'll feel turned on in a whole new way, I promise you. Your body, emotions, and sensations will wake up. Whew, it is just a stunning piece of magic. It's 15 minutes and it might just change everything. So head on over to krishall.ca/thepleasureportal and download it for free.
Yeah. Is there anything else that comes to mind uh, about tantra, about how to practice safe? I won't say safe. I'll say safer tantra. I mean, because obviously nothing is ever completely safe, but how do we notice? How do we recognize when tantra will create a safer space for us?
Well, right, it's a big question. And, I will say there is a big problem with how Tantra is perceived and how it's labeled and what it how it is even defined. And especially it's something that's been really co-opted and appropriated, particularly by Western teachers. So when I talk about Tantra, I am very mindful of this. So I will always refer to sacred sexuality work as neo tantra, to distinguish it from more classical tantra, um, which is a very specific lineage based set of practices and beliefs. I am initiated into a tantric lineage, which has got nothing to do with sexuality and is all about meditation and mantras and very specific practices, which you cannot do unless you've been taught that. And I have absolutely no authority to teach that work either. And as a white Western woman, I'm very, very clear about that. That is my personal practice, and I separate that from what I teach, because I think it's really important to be aware of that. And so that is something else I think it's really important to be aware of. Like, what are people calling their work? And if they're talking about, divine feminine and Shiva and Shakti and all of these things, and they're bouncing around the world, living a very privileged lifestyle and not examining their privilege and perhaps not looking at the structures of power within which they exist, then to me that's problematic. So I think if we can strip it away and say, okay, well, what about these sexuality practices? How can we engage with them in a safer way? Then I think that is really helpful. And, some of these practices can be incredibly powerful and, as we said, can liberate a lot of energy and can create a lot of altered states. But I think it's important to look for doing things in a way that are trauma informed, as we were talking earlier about taking a slower approach. I am a big believer that going slow and steady and going at the pace that your body and your nervous system can handle and can integrate, as you said, this is the way. Because it's like sometimes we need to slow down in order to speed up, to get that deep transformation and to be able to listen and check in with ourselves, like what feels authentic, what feels right, so that we're not just having, as you say, a peak experience, but we're able to integrate and metabolize. And then I think we get to expand our edges and expand our capacity without feeling like we're being thrown off a cliff, and that we can engage with these incredible, profound experiences. Some of the best, most incredible, mind blowing experiences I've had have just been doing, say, partner explorations that have just been focused on my arm, touch practices that have been fully clothed, nothing genital based, but just focusing on my arm and I remember having an orgasm from my elbow and thinking, "Oh my God, how is this possible?" Yeah. So, and then also like being curious about how we can explore that solo as well. So not just with another, like how can we access these experiences and these states with ourselves? I think that's a really curious exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the attention to, like, what language are they using? What language is a practitioner focusing on? And, like, because one of the things I love there is, like, the more you know about something, the more you know that you don't know anything about it. And so if a practitioner who's like, "I know everything, come to me for the answers," is like, "Oh, that's a red flag." "Ah, okay. Uh, alright." And one really amazing, because so the term neo-tantra, I think even as you start to learn tantra, you go, "Okay, wait, what is this?" So neo being that new tantra, and the best comparison I'd heard was, through yoga, right? Because yogic science, yogic philosophy is a very, very ancient practice that comes from similar parts of the world that tantra do. And, um, the best idea there is, like, so yoga is this huge body of work to which the asanas are only like 1%, right? They're the top little skimming piece, but we use those asanas to access the deeper teachings. And the same way, like using sexuality as a way to access tantric practices that's neo tantra. That's taking these ancient practices and pulling out tiny pieces that are applicable to our lives now. And because a lot of ancient tantric practices are no longer really, viable in today's society, and they don't really have as much relevance. And so yeah, just kind of clarifying that for listeners that, like, that is one way to think about it, is that it's tantric and it's not tantra, and it's yogic and it's not yoga. And yes, neo tantra is a way of claim is really stating that, saying, I took some tantric practices and some principles, and we're iterating them to fit into today's society.
Yeah, totally. And as you say that, it's a good reminder that a lot of what we see now in the neo tantra world isn't necessarily ancient. It came out of like the 60s and the 70s with the Osho community and things like that, where people were doing a lot of very experimental stuff. So I think it's really good to be aware of that. And the other thing I would say as well is, one thing, regardless of what label people put on something, I think one thing that really stands out and is really important is the role of embodiment, because we need to repattern our system and we need to work with the body. This is not something you can just get on a head level. And I think that's one of the reasons many of us were drawn into this world, is because we felt like a disconnection between our mind and our body. And feel, loads of my clients tell me, "Oh, I feel like I'm just operating from the neck up and I'm disconnected." And so embodiment for me is like one of the massive keys in this, helping people find simple practices and ways to re-engage with their body and to discover how your body feels in the moment. And that's a lifelong skill that we get to develop. Yeah.
Mhm. And so would you say that embodiment is the reason, or one of the main reasons why, like, this work is so vital and why you were drawn to it in the first place? Like, looking at where we are in the world right now, the current climate, like, yeah, why is this work so vital?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different tangents I could go off on there. I will say that as I came out of that cult experience and I had to relearn everything I thought I knew about sex and pleasure and orgasms, embodiment tools and practices were an absolute lifeline for me, because I had to run everything through my body and my system, and get really honest about what is a yes, what is a no, and really discover that for myself. And so as I did that process, it was absolutely essential. And I think that is one of the reasons why I think this work is so vital right now. Like, when you look at what we are confronted with on a daily basis in society, from our governments, from the structures of power in which we are all enmeshed, whether we like it or not, We're living in this capitalist society. We've got, climate collapse. We've got all of these things. I just look at what's happening in the States right now. It's like every day I go online and it's like you're just being bombarded with it's literally it's got to the point where I go on social media and I'm like, oh God, what is it today? And I'm not even living in the States. But there's stuff everywhere. I'm in the UK and we have our own struggles with everything. And it's finding ways to come back to our bodies and to our centers and really honoring our truth gives us a very necessary resource to be able to just move through the world, to be able to tune out the noise and resource ourselves and to find our energy and our resilience. And pleasure and orgasms and embodiment and nervous system work and self-regulation and knowing our boundaries and all of this core stuff is just absolutely essential. I believe we need this more than ever. It's not a frivolous luxury. It's not a nice thing to have. And that's why a lot of people come to work with me because they want to have better orgasms and start to experience orgasmic bliss. But that's just like the cherry on the top. It's like this is the deep work, is unraveling and dismantling the stuff we've ingested from society where we were told to be quiet, to be a nice, good girl, to know our place, to not speak up, to not cause a fuss. When in fact, what the world's demanding of us right now is that we actually take a stand and that we're able to support the people around us and that we don't burn out in the process.
Oh, yes. I resonate with all that so deeply, and yeah, that piece about embodiment. I also, so similar to Tantra, I feel like embodiment has become one of those buzzwords that everybody talks about nowadays, and there's even people who, claim the title of embodiment coach, and like they pass through that sexual piece and they go straight to, or they kind of land in embodiment space. And yeah, they are just so heavily connected, right? That like embodiment is being in tune with your senses. And that is where pleasure exists. That is where deeper connection with the world around you exists. That's where your intuition lives. That's how you're able to look at something and go, oh, that's bullshit. I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
And yeah, have that like sense of discernment that we all need. When yeah, exactly, like looking at the news and saying, "Is this real? Is this something I need to pay attention to?" Yeah, so thank you for calling that up and just again, that speech, just yes, just all of it is just a fan thought. Oh, yes, in my entire body.
She's there's there's a lot of people out there teaching embodiment and it has become a buzzword and so is being trauma informed. It's like people just grasp onto these labels. So it's always important, as we said, to dig a bit deeper and to, there are plenty of people out there that I see teaching stuff and I look at them and I think, you don't look that embodied, you know? There are plenty of people that do, and that you can feel it oozing from them, and you can tell, like, yes, I can see you live this, you know? And also, let's normalize the journey. I've been in this world for, 15 years plus. I still have days where I struggle, I still have days where I feel disconnected, where I get stressed out and feel that I'm too much in my head and I struggle, or I have resistance to doing any practice and I want to normalize that because we're human and
Yeah.
that's how life is. Yeah.
I get resistance all the time. Yeah. I have days where I'm like, "Wait, why was I so heady today?" Or why was right? But it's yeah, it's how quickly you can get yourself back to baseline. It's that, right? Noticing like, "Oh, I got myself back even 30 seconds faster." And then
Yeah.
like and repeating those practices and knowing which practices, even just like, your 5-minute meditation in the morning helps you go through your day with so much more clarity, embodiment, and groundedness.
Yeah, I tell my clients that as you framed it there, I got myself back. I remind my clients that is embodiment. It's like meditation. Meditation isn't just having a blank mind and no thoughts for half an hour. It's the points where you catch that you've wandered off and you bring yourself back. And it's the same with embodiment. It's the same with like, oh, I've been disconnected, right? What can I do? I'll just put my bare feet on the grass for 5 minutes or take a deeper breath. These are the moments where we come back into being embodied. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the most beautiful reflections from people who, are clients and people that I think both of us may work with is like that reflection of, I got my life back.
Yeah.
I feel like myself again, and I get my life back. And that's just right, it's not about pleasure, although pleasure is the vehicle to getting there. It is just such a powerful mind state that we can follow to get there, but it's not the be all end all. It's the everything else that happens when you start to experience orgasms, for example. Each I would love to touch on orgasms because I think so much of us, like, just point it as that goal, right? But I want to normalize that, like, orgasms are not the goal, but they are a really good indication that something's going right. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love the way you frame that because it's so easy to be stuck in this goal-oriented mindset, you know? And when we take the goal off the table, often that's where the magic happens. It's like a paradox, you know? It really, really is. And as you say, like, I have so many clients who say, "Oh, I finally feel like myself again," you know? Or I've got some of my clients are in their mid-70s and they're having the best sex and pleasure and orgasms of their lives. I've got one client that I worked with in one of my programs, and she overcame an emotional block she had for 40 years about how she felt about herself. And like, this to me, yeah, yes, orgasms are all well and good, but and that was, as you say, pleasure is the vehicle, but this is like the deep work. And also orgasms are a very good barometer as well, as you say. And what I love about female pleasure is there is always more to discover about our bodies. No two orgasms are ever the same. And pleasure is actually infinite when we can really revel in it. When we're able to expand our capacity and be able to stay in deeper experiences and get curious about what's next and staying with what feels good, it is amazing what our bodies are capable of, truly. Whether that is G-spot orgasms or cervix orgasms or energy orgasms or anything else, you know, our bodies are capable of all of this. And I think that's pretty miraculous.
I love that you've called in, like, different orgasms, like, you mentioned elbow orgasms, and yeah, there's breast orgasms, there's heart orgasms. You can basically orgasm from any part of your body. I've personally orgasms from my armpit and from my feet. I was pretty proud of those when they happened. Um, but yeah, so looking at one of the most elusive versions of orgasm, which would be the cervical orgasm. You did mention that, like, I think a lot of women and pussy owners tend to experience cervical or not cervical, the other one, clitoral thing.
Yeah.
Clitoral orgasms, and those are beautiful, and I feel like some people don't put as much value on them, right? 'Cause a a deep cervical orgasm will be the one that happens usually during penetration and during, like, deeper states of arousal, and so, I don't know, is what would you say to people about those types of orgasms, differentiating them, if people feel a little bit weird about which ones they usually experience?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to remove this idea of a hierarchy because I know when I was in the Tantra cult, it was seen that, cervical orgasm is the holy grail. This is the most spiritual. And clitoral orgasms are, basically, we were taught they were the devil and should be avoided at all costs because you're discharging your energy, which I think is a load of BS.
Yeah.
All orgasms are, wonderful and healthy, and your clitoris, they now discovered it's 10,000 nerve endings that your clitoris has. It was previously thought that we had 8,000 nerve endings. And then apparently the scientific research had been done on cows rather than humans. So it was only like a couple of years ago they realized there's 10,000 nerve endings. So science is a little bit behind the curve on this. But I will say what is amazing about cervical orgasms is that it is a state that you can go into that is extremely profound, and for some people can really feel like you touch oneness, or you become one with the divine, or that it's like this, or it can feel very cosmic or psychedelic. And I've had clients have like full visionary experiences, so it's like something that equivalent to like a DMT experience, so they can be incredibly profound. And for some people they can be really subtle as well. They can feel like more of a meditative state. So so people do put a lot of emphasis on it, and they do normally come with penetration and trust and creating a deep sense of safety. And also there can, for a lot of people, be a lot of work in overcoming numbness internally to actually get there. So the way I describe it, it's like a spectrum, and at one end of the spectrum, your cervix might feel numb. If you explore with a wand on your fingers, or with a cock, or anything else that try to stimulate the cervix and it feels numb. Now, over time, if you work with that numbness can shift into becoming sensation and becoming sensitive. Might not necessarily be pleasurable. It might just be a feeling of, oh, this feels odd or different or new or a bit weird even. It can actually provoke quite an emotional response as well. So I know a lot of clients will cry or have this deep sense of like sobbing, even though there's no memory or thoughts attached to it. It's just this deep, vulnerable state, really. And then from there, if we keep working with it, that sensation can eventually become pleasure. And if we keep working with that pleasure, that can eventually become orgasm. So for some people, it can take years to get there. Other people, it unlocks quite quickly. So everybody's different, but it is totally possible. And I've even had clients who've had full hysterectomy, so total hysterectomy, don't even have a cervix anymore. That's been removed. And they've still been able to have like the same kind of orgasm through the stimulation around that area where the cervix would have been. Almost like when people have a limb amputated and they can still feel like that arm. It's a similar kind of thing, which I think is just fascinating.
That is fascinating because I have heard in a lot of my studies there was talk about the energy of the cervix, right? And that's like this deep, deep energy center within us. That's literally the portal to life itself, right? Like that is it's just a mystical, magical piece of human bodies. And that a lot of women happen to have this part removed sometimes for their health for various reasons. And so like saying that to a giant group of people, like, okay, feel for your cervix can be really, really triggering for people who have had it removed. And that so instead to work with like the energy of the cervix, right? Like that's where you start sex magic from. That's just this core bundle, this piece. So that's fascinating to learn that somebody who's had a hysterectomy is still able to feel those feelings of orgasm. That's just that says so much more about the human body than I can possibly articulate in this moment. Like that is possible.
Yeah. And as you say, it's like this portal of creativity and potential, and I feel like the cervix has its own kind of consciousness. And when we're able to tap into that, wow, it's wild. And I know that might sound really kind of woo-woo and out there, but I think the more we can build a connection with this deep, mysterious part of our body that is so deep and they're hidden inside, whether that's through the heart, or whether that's energetically, or whether that's with the mind. And I have a lot of clients who might, the idea of stimulating their cervix still feels like a bridge too far. And perhaps for some clients, they just want to focus on external work. And it's like, that's totally fine. And you can still make a mental and emotional connection to your cervix if you have one, until you feel ready to physically work with it. So there's many, many layers to this as well.
Yeah, and I loved hearing the journey that people can go through because like I really identify that as well. Like I'm not on the side of the numbness. I'm on the side of the oversensitive. Always right. And then that is a spectrum in itself, right? Like that both of them are kind of caused by the same factors, but it just results in a different physical sensation in the body. And yeah, that my own journey, like I could celebrate right now. I just had one of the best cervical orgasms of my life the other day. Saying and yeah, that it came from that, like, slow, like exploration and slowly making it feel more comfortable, especially with the same partner and, like, dive deeper into safety, and that, yeah, the result is very, like it's a blissful state of total relaxation.
And so, and as you say, that it's something about presence as well. You know, the slowness, it takes time. It really can take a lot of time and presence and safety with a partner as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
so essential. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about the differences and also just that just going way back to when, like, the tantra cult you were in told you that clitoral orgasms are the devil, like, okay, um, quick mention on that, quick, red flag just to say if any teacher is saying that a type of orgasm is the devil and they're trying to teach you sexuality, maybe run away from that one.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's a way of controlling women's bodies, which, we see that in plenty of religious organizations and institutions as it is. Um, Unfortunately, we were all too deep in it already to realize that that was a red flag. So it's amazing what can be overridden, Like, I'm I like to think of myself as an intelligent woman. I'm a feminist. How on earth did I end up in that? It's because 80% of what they taught seemed legit, and then it's just these weird things that get woven through. And whenever everything else seems legit, why would you question, the other 20%? But yeah, it was a massive red flag looking back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your self pleasure practice, your masturbation, quickly getting off with a vibrator, or is it a full body spiritual experience of healing and joy? I promise this is actually possible. That's why I'm obsessed with Wands, a gorgeous, women owned Canadian brand that makes ethically sourced crystal pleasure tools. Think yoni eggs, G spot wands, and toys that actually help you feel more alive, connected to your body, and more orgasmic than ever before. And yes, I do have a discount code just for you, Kris10 for 10% off at checkout. Vibrators are great, but they often stimulate externally and way too fast, bypassing the slow, internal, emotional unwinding that deeper pleasure requires. Crystal wands and yoni eggs don't just get you off, they get you into your body and can actually facilitate deeper healing. There is so much healing to be had in sexual practices, and one of the safest and easiest ways is to do that when you're doing your pleasure alone. Your body is capable of so much pleasure, and if you feel a little, hey, hey, that's cool if it's all you want, but I just want you to know that there is more. When you go slow, touch intentionally, feel what arises, trust the process, your body surrenders. How many of us have just wanted to feel surrendered in sex? That's where the real pleasure is. You start having deeper orgasms. You cry after release because something long held finally let go. You look forward to self pleasure because it's not just about climax, it's about coming home to your body. So head on over to wands.com, that's wands with 2 A's, and use code Kris10 at checkout to grab 10% off your first order. Your sacred pleasure practice is calling.
So you mentioned before about a woman in her 70s having the best sex of her life. And that is a story I hear more and more, and I love hearing it. And I know that you have mentioned that you have like a special talent for working with premenopausal women and beyond. And yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that power that women come into later in life, and yeah, why it's such a rich time for pleasure.
Oh, great question. And I think there is a lot here to be said that when we get into, our 40s and beyond, like, there's a few things happening physically that, we just don't have the same kind of drive and, we're just very different to who we were in our 20s. And our bodies start to make it very clear that we can't just push through like we could in our 20s. Like, our energy levels aren't the same. Like, my output for work, for example, I still have a great output for work and a big capacity to run a lot of projects and, grow my business. But at the same time, I can't, like, run on fumes like I could in my 20s and my 30s. I couldn't stay up all weekend and then be fit for work on a Monday morning like I used to be able to. But also then when it comes to hormones, and particularly sex hormones and what's happening sexually, that does change as our estrogen and, progesterone levels change. We also find we've got less bandwidth for people pleasing. So it's not just what's happening physically, but, like, the bullshit radar is just like, I'm just not available for things that exhaust me," or "Why am I now my partner is annoying me, and I just, like, I'm sick of the sight of them, and something's gotta change." All of these are, like, the emotional and physical components that can often show up at this point in life. And yet at the same time, like, I'm 52 now, and yes, there are still hormonal challenges, and I'm deep in my menopausal journey. But at the same time, I feel more myself than I ever have. I feel more in my own power than I ever have. I feel more grounded. I've got less tolerance for any bullshit. I'm not going to waste my time and my energy being in spaces doing things that aren't really lighting me up. And, like, I've got a client in her 70s and she says, "I don't do anything now unless it makes my pussy tingle." And I'm like, I am here for that 100%. Yeah, 100%. And so these are the kind of shifts that can happen. We just can't tolerate stuff that, like, we used to. And sexually, like, if you're finding, like, what can happen is your libido can drop off the radar for some people in midlife. You might start to notice vaginal changes, so more dryness, perhaps more sensitivity. You might find it takes longer to get turned on and aroused, or that your arousal type starts to change. So if you used to be someone who had a lot of spontaneous desire and arousal and could easily get turned on, you might now find that shifts and you've got more responsive desire, that it takes longer to get going and that the conditions need to be right, and that you might find you need more slowness and more foreplay, and, because particularly if there's vaginal changes, we can't just override and push through. And if I look back to what I was doing in my 20s, where I would just be drunk, and I would rely on alcohol to relax and let go of my inhibitions, and I do more sexual things to please my partner, perhaps because I wasn't so empowered and in tune with myself. As we get older, that our bodies don't let us do that as much. And so that can, for a lot of people, feel very challenging, but it's also an opportunity to look at how we do pleasure and how we relate and how we do sex. And this is why I'm a huge believer that midlife can be the start of our pleasure and not the end. That it can be a stripping away of, like, well, who am I now at this point in my life? And what was working doesn't work. So I've got to get really honest. I've got to get authentic. Might mean making some decisions about who we're interacting with and the types of relationships we're in and how we want to do sex in the second half of our life. Um, but there is so much more to discover, and it's never too late. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah, I really love that, like, rediscovering that it's really just about the fact that you are going to be a completely different person as you travel through life. One of the most amazing, quotes, stories, moments, there was this man that I met, a man, a couple, and they had been together since high school. They were in their 50s, and they'd been together since they were 17, and they have sex once a day, and they just are deeply in love, and it's amazing. And somebody asked, the man in the relationship, like, "What's it like being married to the same person for 35 years?" And he's like, "Well, I haven't been married to the same person. I've think this is like 5.0 of my wife. Like, I've been married to 5 different women over the course of this time," and just acknowledging that, like, you're never gonna be the same. And I love that, like, this isn't you grieve when your body changes, when the things you used to do, you can't do anymore, but that's an opportunity for growth, for something different, for something so magical to enter your life.
Totally, and I think, as you say there about that couple, like, I've had clients like that. Again, very similar client in her 50s and been with her partner since high school, and they are now having the best sex and orgasms, like, of their entire relationship. They're growing closer and they feel closer every day, and it's because they're relating with freshness. They're not going into it with, like, this default expectation of who that person is and, "Well, I do this and then you do that," and it gets this very mechanical, samey thing. Every time they come together, they're like, "Well, who are you today? What's here? What's alive?" And working from that space, and I think that is a real antidote to things getting stale and samey and yeah, and it's so, so, so important. I love the idea of 5 different iterations. And, it's important to remember our partners have their own challenges as well,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, like, you can really get stuck when you expect the even just the orgasm to be the same, and to be, like, really questioning and having that moment of like, "Oh, no, but this wasn't the same as before." And I think, yeah, my partner and I have really learned that time and time again of, oh, yeah, like, we wanted to recreate that sexual experience, but that happened then. This is different. We're different people. We're different people now than we were a year ago and even just yesterday. And, like, the only thing you can expect is that it won't be the same. And if
Yeah,
there's fear in that, maybe try to see if there's excitement in that too.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, it's really healthy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so okay, so that I love this image that I have in my head of, like a sex coach being somebody with like a whistle and like blowing it over top of 2 people having sex in a bed or 1 or multiple and being like, "Okay, you're doing it wrong. You're doing your position wrong." And I really wanna make that into a video one day, but, that's not what sex coaches do. So I'd love to spend a moment talking about what sex coaches do and how people listening can start to even maybe move through their own sexual blocks by themselves. That is really what sex coaching is about, is moving through sexual blocks.
Yeah, 100%, and, this is the cornerstone of my work, is really giving people the tools to discover for themselves what brings them joy, what lights you up, what turns you on, and discovering this in your own body. It's not about tools or techniques or positions. Um, it's not about trying to get your spark back by buying sexy lingerie or anything like that. It's about getting curious as to how pleasure moves through you and what pleasure feels like in your body and what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what a yes feels like, what a no feels like, and getting really honest about that and learning how to get that spark for yourself. Because once you know what works for yourself and you can cultivate pleasure and orgasms for yourself, then it makes it so much easier to be having the conversations with your partner about, hey, can we try this? Or actually, something needs to change here. Or I'm feeling like, I'd like to explore slowing things down or whatever it is, or guiding your partner into showing them what works for you without them feeling like a failure or they're getting it wrong and all these kind of things. So that's how I work. I predominantly work with women and vulva owners rather than couples. I particularly work with the person themselves and helping them find it for themselves and then giving them the support and the strategies to develop the confidence and to have those conversations with their partner And we get to debrief and we get to, and the stories they tell me about the practices that they've explored with themselves or how intimacy's been with their partner and kind of bring it all together. So it's about having the support and the accountability. And so that if something then happens, like I have a client who last week she had her first G-spot orgasm and she's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So then we say, "Okay, so we do it we do a debrief. What were the steps that got you there this time that you hadn't experienced this before?" So that then you've got a roadmap for yourself of how this works in your body and what conditions are required so that then you can recreate it and it's not just a happy accident. And also then what is the ripple effect in your life? Because what happens in the bedroom has a direct impact on everything that happens outside of that. So we talked about earlier about why is it so vital. So, it's not separate to the rest of your life. So sometimes with my clients, we're looking at what's going on in their lives, what's the stress that they're dealing with, what are the external factors that are squeezing them from having any time to explore. What is the resistance that's coming out? What are the blocks that they need to unravel and work through? And really helping them and hand holding them through that process so that they can get to the good stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so if a client would come to you and say like, "Okay, I'm not having the sex I wanna be having, and I feel blocked, but I'm not sure by what would
Mhm.
be the first question you would ask them?
I would normally start by asking them, well, what is it that you deeply desire? If you could have whatever you wanted, and if orgasms were really easy for you and natural, yeah, what would that give you? What would your life look like? Describe it, and starting from that place of like starting to get curious about what's possible. Because I think we get so stuck in what's the matter with me, what's wrong with me, where am I broken, where am I blocked, that we don't also take the opportunity to look at what's possible for me. Because we don't have the framework for that in society. We don't see the potential. And so that'd be my starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that that's your starting point too.
Mm.
That's mine is, yeah, like, what do you want? And that question, like, the amount of people that it stumps them or that it makes them reflect or that they, like that takes them, like, on a whole journey of, like, "Wait, I never even asked myself what I wanted." Like, it's very possible to get exactly what you want, but you need to know what you want first. Like, I love the expression of, you get to decide the what, and then the universe will decide the how.
Yeah,
And
totally.
right, that like that's what do you want? What would it look like to succeed in this? And and yeah, that usually people are just focused on what they don't want. And the more you focus on that, the more that might show up for you.
And also about having the permission. I have conversations with people who've never been able to express their desires or never been able to say some of the things out loud, things that they do want or things that have happened to them. They've never had a safe space to be able to discuss that. And I've had conversations where I've asked that question, as you say, some people are stumped and other people have just it's made them cry because they've not been able to give themselves permission to deeply desire or to dare to dream that something more is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that piece comes a lot from whatever we were taught about sex growing up. And if
Yes.
you were religious, especially,
Yeah.
of like, there's so much shame intertwined with sex and intertwined with pleasure that like it's so deeply like there's just such deep shame spirals
Yeah.
present in all of us that we need to slowly unwind with lots of compassion and care.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's deep work.
It really is. Such beautiful work. And yeah, as we come to the end of this conversation, is there anything else you want to share? Anything else you want to let the listeners not quite about like we'll get to your programs and how they can work with you next, but yeah, like is there anything left in this conversation that you wish had been said?
Oh. just that it's never too late. There's always more to discover, and I think there is a piece here, like we were just talking about permission, and when it comes to sexual block, shame comes up a lot and guilt comes up a lot. That people feel guilty for making it a priority, feeling that you should be doing something more productive, or that it's not okay to do this, or that it is, you know, that it is frivolous, and it's not. I know I said this earlier, but it is really essential. It really is. And we owe that to ourselves. We owe it to our communities and to our partners and to our families, and we owe it to society to be our full selves. Yeah.
Accessing our pleasure lets us be our full selves.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much for all of your wise words, and I'm just sitting here nodding along, just going, "Yes, yes, yes," like, the whole time, giant smile on my face going, "Oh my gosh." So yes, thank you so much for everything you've shared today, all your unique perspectives and your wisdom, and, if people wanted to work with you, find your work, how could they do so?
Yeah, come and find me on my website, mangalaholland.com. You'll find a ton of resources and programs over there. I'll also give you a link to my free 3-part video series called From Shutdown to Sensual Satisfaction. So that's a really nice intro, some very simple embodiment tools to help you, connect more in with your body and start to claim more of your sexual confidence. And I'm also, I have a #1 best-selling book on Amazon called Orgasms Made Easy. So I'll share the link with you for that as well.
Amazing, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a really rich, powerful conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to I'll Have What She's Having. If you love this episode, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, leave a review, or shout it from the rooftops, preferably mid-orgasm. If you want to go deeper, join me at krishall.ca for group programs, private coaching, and more pleasure-packed resources. And remember, your pleasure is your power. So go out there and flirt with life itself.